It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, October 31st, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that might need my own emotional support alligator after this one.
I did take a picture with an alligator once. I did.
All right, we are going to get into what went right and what went wrong in this game versus Carolina. Plus, we are going to check in with the Phantoms as we do each and every Tuesday, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. And as a show, we are at Locked On Flyers pretty much anywhere out in social media land. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, thanks once again for coming to us live post-game from the Wells Fargo Center parking lot. And we got our wish. Morgan Frost was back in the lineup for this one.
He was. Yeah, he was. And he showed some good moments. I mean, he was about the only guy on the power play that could, really get its own entry with speed. Couturier tried a little bit, wasn't quite as successful, but still after that, that power play is just a disaster. It is. I think they only had a couple shots on net on their entire tries, maybe like 2 or 3. The thing about it is, there were a lot of rush shots, and we could talk about that. But when you're on the power play, there's no need to rush the shot. And if Brink is going to play on the half wall and get that much power play time on the top power play, you have to hit the net. And he didn't, and he went 1-on-3 at one point. Like, there was a lot of, even Tippett, he got the puck, took a shot, but then he tried to go do a wraparound, and he completely shoots it wild. And, once you do that, puck goes the other way. And it's those kinds of things. I'm not saying the guys shouldn't shoot. What I'm saying is shot selection has to be better. Like when Tippett had the breakaway, why did he, on a backhand where he really could use only one hand, why didn't he try and go short side? Why did he go far side where he completely misses the net? Like there's things like this that really, for a game that the Flyers were getting, killed early on, even though it was tied, they could have won it, but they didn't.
Yeah, I think, with the power play, they were actually getting some chances, especially in the third period on the power play. They did get 4 shots on goal in the power play in the third period, 7 total overall, and
Okay.
5 of them were high danger chances. So I do want to give them a little bit of credit there, but
That's more
overall,
than I
I think.
thought, so I'll give them credit on that. But yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't successful ultimately. And that's where maybe the shot selection portion comes into play here, right? Where, Anderson made some incredible saves. Don't
He
want to
did.
take that
No question.
away. Don't want to take that away from him. But when you have 5 power play opportunities and don't convert on any of them, that is going to affect the outcome of a game like this. That's really close, uh, on the scoreboard. I think that on the ice, especially in that second period, I think the Flyers did not look real good, and they were playing on their heels for a good portion of that game. I think that the Flyers were kind of flailing defensively to try and stop that speed, and
Yes.
the way that Carolina was managing zone entries, I think, was just beautiful, to be honest. And the Flyers were having a lot of trouble with that, but I do think the Flyers kind of got it back together in the third period. They just couldn't make it happen.
No, they did. I think they did get it together in the third period. Teravainen spoke after the game, and they weren't happy, obviously, with the amount of turnovers. And and the power plays that they gave up. But in the end, what they really did well after his goal was for 2 minutes and 20 seconds, they completely shut the Flyers down. They couldn't even get the puck in their own end until the very end, and they could never pull Carter Hart. That's a big fail. And that's, again, we've talked about that 6-on-5 stuff.
Yeah, I
Like,
think that
even if they could get it going, that was still 5-on-5.
right. And they did talk on the broadcast about, the Flyers are not taking a timeout here. Now there was
Right. I
sort
was
of a
wondering that too. That's a good point.
yeah, and I think that there was enough of a break where maybe they felt like they were getting enough rest and couldn't do that. But I think that even taking the time out would have given them time to maybe plan something a little bit more complete and to have a better option to get Carter Hart off the ice at that point. I just think that after all of the effort that the Flyers put in and all those shots and all those high danger chances they had late in the game, for none of them to go, and then for Teravainen to break through on Carter Hart after Carter Hart made some unbelievable saves of his own.
Unbelievable saves, like some of the best he's made all year. It's just like he deserved a better fate. And
Yeah,
that was where, like, when the Teravainen shot went in, I was like, that's, you feel bad for the goalie, but then
yeah.
you're like, all right, look, there's 2:20 left. Let's see what they can do with it. And they didn't do anything with it.
Yeah, and I feel like that is the kind of thing they need to come back from a little better, and they need
Yeah.
to be a little bit more resilient and not flail with the puck. Like I said, I feel like there was just some real like nervous energy, errant passes happening, and everybody was. I felt like the effort was there, but just like they don't have the discipline to make it more of a mechanical effort on them. It was just a lot of like we just got to try anything and everything, and nobody was like working in conjunction with each other in those last couple of minutes.
Yeah, even Travis Konecny didn't have a good game, and I kind of wonder now, was he like thinking too much about last game just because of the one turnover? You wonder because he was off his game too.
Yeah, yeah. I think, looking for some more bright spots here to take away from it. I do think Morgan Frost looked pretty solid in this one, and I think he earned a chance at another game here. And I do honestly think that it was very interesting to have Scott Lawton on that fourth line as center because I think that line performed better overall in this game. That fourth line, Garnet Hathaway was able to get a goal in this one. And I know he didn't have the primary assist on this one, but if you look at Scott Lawton's play on that entire sequence, like it was really strong, really solid. His effort made that play happen. And as much as we talk about wanting to put Scott Lawton back on the wing to a large degree, and I still like ultimately agree with that, I do think he looked really good at center on that fourth line.
No, he did. He made something happen because I'll admit it. I tweeted and said, these guys haven't scored a point all year, and he got them to
Mhm.
generate some offense. So I do think Lawton had a real positive effect. Frost did make a really good play around behind the net to set up a scoring
Yep.
chance. I did see that. Uh, yeah, I think he's done enough to earn a spot, but I'm also going to tell you, like, Tyson Forster didn't have a good game. Like, again, if nothing else, Frost could earn a spot just because maybe Forster should sit a game or two. So they're going to have to worry about or think about those kinds of things. But yeah, Lawton, if nothing else, keep Frost in, keep Lawton on the fourth line because he did make it better.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. And, I do think that this is a tough loss in a much different way than the loss was to the Ducks. We talked about what they could learn from that loss to the Ducks. And I think this is a different kind of loss where there's other things that they can learn from and bring forward to future games in terms of keeping calm under pressure and just getting the muscle memory of some of these passing sequences locked down so that they can, play with confidence when they feel like they're scrambling in a way that they did not in this game.
Yeah, like you said, and I was surprised at the shot total actually. They did do better, a little better on the power play late, but there was just times when you could tell they hadn't practiced it. And you could especially tell with Frost at the beginning, because like that's really hard for him to break in on that and try and do something when he hasn't been
And he
playing.
did.
and he did eventually, but it took a little while. So, if they aren't going to practice the power play, they do need to practice their passing. I agree with that, because I think that could do a lot. Because guys like Atkinson, he's almost having to be a playmaker here, because it's just nothing else was going, on his line. Same with Farabee. These guys are
Well,
trying to set up plays rather than trying to score goals at times.
although you did see Cam Atkinson toward the end when he had a 2-on-1 with Tippett, and he took the shot instead of making the pass, which was the right move to make, despite it not going in.
Well, it was, and also because the defense decided we're just not going to let you pass it to Tippett, and Anderson then knew I'm going to play the shooter, so he did the
Yeah.
right thing for sure. But I think it was smart on Carolina to say, all right, we're not going to play Atkinson, because then he's going to try and get it to Tippett. So, again, that's where Atkinson does the right thing, but I feel like he could have probably tried to score a few more in this game, because there were opportunities, but he's trying to set up guys, and so is Farabee, and that's the thing. That's the tough part when you're not getting a lot of, they don't have a lot of playmakers out there at times.
Well, again, lots to take away from this one, lots to learn moving forward, and we hope that the Flyers can continue to make strides later this week against Buffalo. In the meantime, we've got a minor league affiliate in the Lehigh Valley Phantoms to talk about, and we'll do that coming up next.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app's so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get into the action this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
We've got a home and home coming up against the Buffalo Sabres. And in order to preview those matchups, we're welcoming friend of the show, Joe Yurden, back. It's going to be a great conversation, so stay tuned for that on tomorrow's show. And we'll also be having a mailbag this week, so get those questions in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. You can send us a message on Twitter or comment over on our YouTube channel. So the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, weird weekend, only a 2-game weekend this week. There's apparently an illness going around the team. So Tanner Lazinski was out for both games this past weekend. A little unclear as far as other scratches that may have been illness related as well. Of course, the bigger part of the Phantoms update here was that, as we know, Emil Andrae was sent down. And so these were his first couple of games back with the Phantoms. And unfortunately, like about 30 seconds into the game on Sunday, there was a collision on the ice and he left the game at that point. As of recording this show, we don't have an update on his injury status yet. So that's a to be determined situation. And then, of course, the Phantoms rightfully, they held a moment of silence for Adam Johnson at Sunday's game. As we mentioned, he spent some time on the Phantoms as well as the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins in the AHL. It was just really lovely what they did for him. And they made up a jersey on Sunday and hung it on the bench during warm-ups.
Didn't they have his number on their helmets?
Yeah.
Which was nice. Yeah. Very nice. They did a great job.
They did. So, just kind of a weirdness around.
Well, there's a whole thing. I don't want to get too far into it, but there are former players that are saying there should be like formal charges going on here. I refuse to look at the video, so I can't comment. But again, I don't know what's in someone's head to say if this was like, on purpose, or even if it was on purpose, was it accidental, but it happened because the person made the action? I don't know. But if you go on Twitter, you'll see some strong opinions on that. And I just prefer to wait until the police do their job over there.
Yeah, I think that's the best course of action for us to take. In the meantime, there was hockey this weekend.
Was Saturday.
Well, that's part of what we got to get into here. The Phantoms lost both games this weekend, 4-0 to Hershey on Saturday, 4-1 versus Hartford on Sunday. And I think that these are two very different kinds of losses we had here this weekend, where the loss to Hershey and Lappy talked about this post game a little bit, but I think with Hershey being such a good team, they played scared for the first like 10-15 minutes of the game, and they finally got back into it, but they just couldn't get one in. They did wind up like out shooting Hershey in that game when all was said and done. But, they're just a tough team to play against. But I do think that they did come back from that initial lull. Whereas the game on Hartford, I think that was just a mess where they had a long stretch without getting any shots on goal. And they just got too bogged down in the physicality of it. And that Hartford team has a couple of like very tall gentlemen
Oh
playing
yeah,
on it.
they do.
And really what happened is Garrett Wilson got sucked into fights, and he got into a fight early in the game, and then you can't get into a second fight or you get tossed. And he got a misconduct later in the game, but there was like 3 sets of incidents in that game, and I felt like this game was dominated more by the veterans doing AHL style physical fighty hockey as opposed to, really trying to put together like an actual hockey plan here.
Yeah, I mean, but we talk about a lot of these same things with the NHL team. My feeling is this. They're in 6th place right now, unacceptable. They're 14th on the power play, unacceptable. They're 9th on the penalty kill, unacceptable. You can give me any excuse you want on the opening game, and I don't care if they outshot them. You still didn't score. You still lost 4-0. Are they a good team? Sure. Yes, they are a good team. Are you a good team? That's the question you have to ask yourself now. Because now after these 2 games, there's a load of players that we've talked about down here that are underperforming. They just are. And it's a little worrisome. It's early in the season, I get it, but the problem with the AHL season is it creeps up on you because it's not an everyday thing like the NHL is. And that's where, if you get into these bad habits and you blow a couple weekends, 2 or 3 weekends in a row, you really could fall behind.
Yeah, and I think that is a big deal, especially when you get a 2-game weekend where you don't have the exhaustion factor
Correct.
in that Sunday game. I think that, you really do need to take advantage of those weekends and get all the points you can. Now, I think that there are some bright spots here. So if you look at the second line they have going with Desnoyers centering Lycksell and Tuomala, we talked about them last week. This is a
Mhm.
fantastic line. It's good for all 3 of them developmentally. Olle Lycksell is having a tremendous season here. He leads the team in
Yep.
shots on goal, and he's scoring. And I think, Desnoyers is getting better as a two-way player than he was before. And I think we still continue to see like bright spots from Tuomala. Man, his speed, just like it is tremendous to
Mhm.
watch. And he's just, I think that is the issue for me with this line is like, how do we get Tuomala more engaged offensively to be the one taking the shots and get the balance of that line a little bit better so that he is more activated offensively and gains confidence.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing with Tuamala. I think right now um, you see the talent there, but you also see the reason maybe why he hasn't really put together a big season yet. And, he's doing okay. 4 points in 7 games is okay. I think even though he's 20, I feel like he should be doing a little better because of the, overseas playing that he had done. But honestly, he hadn't played a lot of games. So it's really hard to evaluate him right now. But at least things are going okay. With Lycksell, it's easy to evaluate. He's 24. So if everybody wants to use that catchphrase, well, we want players 25 and under. Well, he's one of them. He has 6 goals in 7 games. Last year, he had 14 goals, so he's going to pass that. He has only played 8 games in the NHL. Like, that's it, 8 games. And so at some point, if they don't give him a chance, he could turn into Jonathan Marchessault or somebody like that somewhere else. Like, that's the risk
Yeah.
here for Olle Lycksell, because I feel like he's doing everything you would ask him to do. And I just feel like it may not matter. It may come down to injuries as the only reason maybe he gets called up, but he's doing his part.
He absolutely is, and he was the only goal scorer for the Phantoms in the whole weekend. He did score that one goal versus Hartford on Sunday, and
Desnoyers is disappointing. Very disappointing. He is.
Yeah, I think that I'm of two minds on this, because I think offensively and purely by numbers, yes, you would absolutely say that for sure. Right now, he has a goal and 2 assists in 7 games, and that's just not good enough, right?
No.
I think that's what the team is looking for. That's what the organization is looking for, is to get him more points on the board. But again, I really feel like that there's a balance issue on that line, and Desnoyers is trying to play more of a two-way game in this scenario, because
He's trying to
Lycksell's
do that anyhow. Like, he has to do that just to survive in pro hockey, but he did it better last year.
Right. And that's where I feel like this line needs to balance out a little better, and they need to figure some stuff out to get Desnoyers some more opportunities here. And I think that is a huge part of it, but I absolutely agree that he needs to step it up offensively. And I think just for a team perspective and an individual perspective, I think that is going to be very important. I'm also curious to see how that is going to get affected as JR Avon gets more and more ice time and is more and more a factor in the lineup. He started last weekend on the 4th line, played on the 4th line on Saturday's game. They moved him up to the 3rd line on Sunday's game, and he got a few more minutes there. And I'm just very curious as to where he'll fit in to this picture and who they're going to put him on a line with to try and kind of jumpstart his development a little bit, because he did miss those games.
Yeah. And I want to mention, Cooper Marody, in the sense that I remember him in his draft year. I picked him as a draft sleeper. He came up early, probably too early, and he kicked around. He hasn't had a lot of NHL games, but in the AHL, he's been a really good player. And he has not been rewarded at all by the organization, even for a game. And it just kind of makes me wonder, like, why not? There have been opportunities in the last 2 years, and last year he had a terrific year, and this year he's having another good year. And it's just, why not?
Yeah.
And I don't know an answer.
Yeah, I don't know either. But I do think that they're trying to work with what they got at the NHL level right now, and figure things out before they make any call-ups or switch anything around from a roster perspective on the forward side.
Right. On defense, they're more than happy to, right? Like, they bring up Louis Belpinio, who we know is going to fade at the NHL level. We really don't know what Cooper Marody would do.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think he's having a really good season so far. So we'll see, but there's more guys to talk about. We do need to talk about that blue line and what is going on there, especially given the potential Emil Andrae injury, and we will get to that coming up next. You know that feeling when your favorite Flyers player scores a hat trick? If you want to get that feeling and win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. You can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. You can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football. Plus, entries can be made in under a minute. With elite NHL players like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews, plus the new guys like Connor Bedard, all you need to do is make more or less picks on stats for those stars. You choose from stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you have to correctly pick the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and get those picks right so you can win big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL, all one word. See terms of use for details and locational availability. So, wading back into our Phantoms conversation, Wade Allison. Uh, sorry, that was a terrible pun.
You try.
We talked about him last week, and I just wanted to do a quick check-in on him because we saw that he got bumped down to the fourth line last week. They did move him back up to that first line on Sunday. And, we didn't see the results, obviously, because we didn't get any goals from anybody really this
Right.
weekend. But I will say, I feel like there's more just of a focus there to his game. I think he is maybe about to turn that corner in terms of figuring out what he needs
I
to
mean,
do
he
at
better.
Lehigh
This is
Valley.
his make it or break it year. Like, this is it. They're not going to
Yeah.
sign him again if he doesn't turn the corner.
No, but I feels like he's getting there. And with some
Okay.
of the shuffling that happened, I think he just needs to like adjust a little bit. So, to be continued, I think, on that conversation. But I do want to talk about the blue line because with the return of Emil Andrae, they broke up that Jennings and Attard pairing, which I understand why they did it to some degree because like on paper, Emil Andrae and Ronnie Attard, I think, make a good combination.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost think it would have been better with Jennings, Andre and Jennings playing together. I think, similar background. And I think Jennings is more of a stay-at-home defenseman and Andre wants to get activated offensively. So I wasn't entirely sure why they picked Ronnie Attard to go with Emil Andrae, but I don't think it's bad. I just maybe would have gone the other. I know it's like sides of ice situation and comfort level there, but I just feel like they could have made it work the other
Why
way.
couldn't they
But
just make? Go ahead.
well, but then your other option is keeping Jennings and Attard
Correct.
together because that has been good for both of them, I think. And
And
then
why is
putting
that not
up, why
possible?
is it? And why didn't they put Emil Andrae with Helge Grans like they had at camp? That was
Right.
actually pretty solid.
Right. So why? Why did they break him up?
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe the explanation that I have come up with, again, not sure if it's true, but the explanation that I have come up with is that clearly they decided that Attard and Jennings were not ready for call-ups, right? For whatever reason,
Yeah.
they
Oh
decided
yeah,
they
because John talked about that. He said they're not
right.
ready. Even
He
though,
said that
like,
they're
I spoke to people who cover the team and we've talked about it. We all felt like if nobody else, Jennings was ready.
correct. And so for whatever reason, they've decided that those two are not ready for a call-up and maybe breaking them up will kick something into gear for them that will get them closer to being ready. That maybe there's a dependency there that they feel like they need to
A
see what they
dependency of
look like
playing
with
well
other
together
people.
because God
I
forbid
know.
one day they actually
I
bring
know.
up the pairing. See, here's what I'm going to say that I am not against. I am not against at some point this year if they brought up that pairing together and, whether they trade Nick Seeler and whoever else is, if Mark Stahl's back, whatever, they start trading them early. I'm fine with that. I think there's a point where you've got to, and I don't care if they're on the third pairing in the NHL, because if they're playing together and they played enough minutes together this year in the AHL, it's going to be okay because that's how you get chemistry going. I've seen teams do this. We saw the Sabres do this years ago after the lockout. They brought up complete lines, and those lines worked in the NHL. It could happen, but it's just like the Flyers don't want it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the other possibility is they know that Jennings is in a better spot right now than Attard, and they think it's better for Ethan Sampson to have somebody like Jennings playing
So
with him
now I'm
at
going to
this
bring
point.
up something. So I
But I
just did
don't
a
know.
deep dive. I did a deep dive on Ethan Sampson thanks to our friends at Instat. And so, after 4 games, he's gotten more opportunity lately. He's got 2 points. He's a +2. He's averaging 2.5 shots a game. 70% of his shots are getting on goal, Rachel. 70%.
Yep.
Only
Yep.
4 minutes of penalty time, which isn't much. and, one hit for, one hit against, that's fine. So what does that tell me? Going by Ethan Sansom's past, he is one of those guys, more opportunity, more
Yep.
points.
Yep.
And I hope the coaching staff understands that. Like, it shouldn't be just me kind of saying it. Now they're giving him a chance now, and he's passing the grade, and he's going to continue to pass the grade. Like, he may pass over some of the other defensemen in that system. But again, they're finding this out because Louis Belpedio is not there. But I think that I hope they understand at some point that he's better and his ceiling is much higher than Louis Belpedio, as an example.
Right. Well, right. And I think that maybe that's like the sort of 1B explanation here
Maybe.
is when I'm talking about the Sampson situation, because if they're seeing these little sparks of great things from him, maybe them putting him with Ginning is a message to Ronnie Attard.
Yeah. And he's getting 15 minutes of ice time, and that's good. I mean, he's 20.
Yeah.
And this is his first pro year. And the fact that he's handling an average, which means he's had more, some games with more, some with less, of 15 minutes is good. Like, and this is a guy we talked about. This is a potential diamond in the rough here.
Yeah, I think so. But I think there's a lot of questions that are coming out of all of this right now. I think that we won't get answers for probably another couple of weeks in terms of how things shake out. Obviously, the Andrae injury is going to be a huge factor here. What they decide to do on the Flyer side of things, if Mete or Belpedio come back down at any point. So I think, again, all of this is more of a to be continued conversation, but we're seeing little bits and little moves here that could be sending significant signals about the development paths of a lot of these guys on the blue line.
Right, but only happening because they're actually getting a chance because of call-ups indirectly, though. It wasn't like they decided on this, Rachel. That's the funny thing that we've noticed, I would say, in the last couple of years with John a little bit, is that a lot of times they're getting production when they don't expect it, because they make a move and it's actually the other move they weren't thinking about that just kind of happened that turns out to be the better one. And so far, I think that's what's happening here, because I don't think Belpedio is going to stick with the Flyers. But if he comes down, maybe they'll be at a point where they say, okay, Ethan Sampson's kind of, we got to kind of have to keep him here. So either we move down like Andrae, or we put Belpedio on the third pair and just give more minutes when we need to. But, we got to start worrying about the future with some of these guys.
Yep, absolutely. So there are 3 games this week. Luckily, it's not 3 games in a row. So we've got a Wednesday game at Hershey again. We've got a Friday game against Hartford, and then Saturday at Springfield. So a lot of opportunities this weekend with a day break worked in there. So that's real good. We'll check on the Phantoms again next Tuesday and hopefully have some good updates to give you. That'll do it for today's show. Again, on tomorrow's show, we're going to talk to Joe Yurden and get that Sabres perspective. Very excited about that. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you, and you can send in those mailbag questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTS OLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.